Cavewoman drinks soda, and regrets everything. The fire crackled in the center of the cave, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Zara watched the flames with tired eyes, feeling the weight of another day of hunting and gathering. Her calloused hands held a piece of roasted meat, still warm, while her stomach rumbled with hunger. It was the same every day, waking with the sun, searching for food, avoiding predators, returning to the cave before nightfall. A routine that had repeated itself since she was born, 23 cycles of seasons ago. Beside him, Krog noisily chewed a piece of bitter root. His companion had a habit of finding the worst roots in the forest, but at least they were edible. Zara sighed, wishing there were something different, something to break the monotony of that existence. She didn't know exactly what she wanted, but she felt an inexplicable emptiness in her chest, as if something was missing that she couldn't even name. That's when it happened. A bright flash illuminated the cave entrance, followed by a sharp, mechanical sound that paralyzed everyone in the clan. Zara dropped her meat and gripped her spear, ready to defend her territory. But what emerged from the light was neither an animal nor an enemy. It was something completely beyond her comprehension. A gleaming metallic structure, the size of a large stone, landed gently on the cave floor. It had rounded shapes and smooth surfaces that reflected the light of the fire in impossible ways. Zara had never seen anything like it. Stone was rough, wood was uneven, animal hide had texture. This was perfect. Artificially perfect. The clan members approached cautiously, murmuring amongst themselves in their guttural language. Krog poked the object with a stick, as if expecting it to bite. Nothing happened. The group's elder, Mira, gestured with her hands indicating that it was the work of spirits, that they should leave it alone. But Zara was fascinated. She approached slowly, reaching out to touch the cold, smooth surface of the object. That's when an opening appeared out of nowhere, sliding to the side with a soft whisper. Inside was something even stranger, a transparent bottle containing a dark liquid that bubbled and shimmered in the firelight. Tiny bubbles rose incessantly across the surface, as if the liquid were alive. Next to the bottle, there was something Zara vaguely recognized as drawings, but unlike any pictogram she knew. They were strange, colorful shapes, arranged in patterns that seemed to mean something. She didn't know it, but she was looking at a soda label, complete with nutritional information, barcode, and advertising slogan. Zara picked up the bottle reverently. It was light, but not like wood. Cold, but not like stone. And the liquid inside moved in a mesmerizing way, the bubbles dancing in a steady rhythm. She shook the bottle lightly and the liquid became even more agitated, producing an effervescent sound that enchanted her. Krog grunted in disapproval, but Zara was determined. She had tasted river water, animal blood, deer milk, tree sap. But never anything like this. Her curiosity was stronger than her fear. With clumsy fingers, she tried to open the bottle, twisting the cap until she heard a small click followed by a hiss. The sound startled half the clan. Several members retreated, preparing their spears. But Zara only smiled. The cap was loose now, and the scent emanating from the bottle was intoxicating. Sweet, artificial, complex. Nothing like the natural fragrances of the forest. It was as if all the fruits she knew had been concentrated and transformed into something new. She hesitantly brought the bottle to her lips. The first sip was a transcendental experience. The icy liquid touched her tongue and exploded in a cacophony of sensations. First came the sweetness, more intense than any honey she had ever tasted, more concentrated than the ripest fruit of the season. Then came the bubbles, thousands of them, bursting against her palate, her tongue, her cheeks. It was as if tiny insects were dancing inside her mouth, tickling her in a way that was simultaneously strange and wonderful. Zara swallowed, and the drink went down her icy throat, leaving a trail of sweetness and effervescence. She had never felt anything so refreshing. After a whole day under the scorching sun, hunting and sweating, that icy liquid was like magic. She took another sip, and then another, unable to stop. The clan watched her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Some thought Zara was being poisoned by some evil spirit. Others thought she had found some kind of magic potion. Mira shook her head in disapproval, muttering about breaking with ancient traditions. But Zara didn't care. For the first time in her life, she was experiencing something truly new, something that transcended the daily routine of survival. Each sip was a revelation. The sugar coursed through her veins, giving her an energy she had never felt before. Her heart raced. Her eyes widened. She felt powerful, invincible, as if she could hunt a mammoth all by herself. The bottle was half empty when Zara began to feel the first changes. Her stomach, accustomed to rare meat, bitter roots, and river water, was receiving an absurd amount of refined sugar and chemicals that didn't even exist in her world. The caffeine began to take effect, further accelerating her heart rate. The acids in the soda attacked her digestive system with an aggressiveness that her body didn't know how to process. But she kept drinking. The flavor was too addictive to stop. She drained the bottle to the last drop, savoring every bubble, every note of artificial sweetness. When she finished, she raised the empty bottle triumphantly, like a hunter displaying his prey. The clan applauded hesitantly, not quite knowing what had happened. The first few minutes after finishing the drink were glorious. Zara felt like a goddess. Energy coursed through her body in waves. She wanted to run, jump, shout. She began to dance around the campfire, laughing loudly, her movements more agile and energetic than ever. Krog watched her, confused, not understanding what had possessed his companion. But then, slowly, inexorably, things began to change. First came the bloating. Zara's stomach began to distend, swelling as if she had swallowed a giant rock. The gases from the soda, which had previously seemed amusing in her mouth, were now trapped in her digestive system, with nowhere to escape. She had never experienced flatulence of that magnitude. Her body, efficient at processing meats and fibrous vegetables, had no idea what to do with all that carbon dioxide. She tried to burp, but could only produce a muffled, uncomfortable sound. The pressure continued to build. Her stomach ached, not with the familiar pain of hunger, but with something new and frightening. It was a sharp, cutting pain that radiated from the center of her abdomen in all directions. Zara stopped dancing and doubled over, clutching her stomach. The clan gathered around her, worried. Mira shook her head with an air of, "I told you so," while preparing some herbs she usually used for stomach aches. But no herb from the Paleolithic world was prepared to handle half a liter of modern soda. The caffeine, which had previously given her energy, now turned Zara into a bundle of nerves. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. She tried to sit down, but she couldn't stay still. She had to move, even though every movement made her stomach protest with renewed pain. And then came the sugar. All that refined glucose had flooded her system at once, causing an insulin spike her body wasn't equipped to handle. At first, the energy was exhilarating. Now, it was terrifying. Zara felt as if her body was vibrating from the inside out, every cell sped up beyond its natural capacity. Krog tried to offer her water, but Zara could barely hold the container with her trembling hands. When she finally managed to drink, the water only intensified the feeling of bloating. Her stomach was so distended that she looked pregnant. The fur clothing she wore clung uncomfortably against her swollen belly. An hour passed. Her energy began to wane, but not gently. It was as if someone were draining Zara of her life force. The drop in blood sugar was brutal. Suddenly, she was exhausted beyond any tiredness she had ever felt. Her legs barely supported her. Her vision blurred at the edges. She wanted to sleep, but the pain in her stomach wouldn't allow it. The gases finally began to find a way out. Zara produced a series of burps that echoed through the cave, each carrying the sweet, chemical taste of the soda. It wasn't relief, though. Each burp was accompanied by a burning sensation that rose up her esophagus. The phosphoric acid was doing its work, irritating her entire digestive tract. Heartburn was something Zara had never experienced. Nothing acidic enough in her normal diet could cause such a sensation. Now, her chest burned as if she had swallowed embers from a bonfire. She curled up on the floor, groaning softly, while Mira tried to get her to drink an herbal infusion that was supposed to soothe her stomach. But the worst was yet to come. 2 hours after drinking the soda, Zara's intestines began to react. All that sugar, all those chemicals, all those foreign substances had to go somewhere. And Zara's body decided it wanted to expel them as quickly as possible. The cramps began suddenly and violently. Zara let out a scream and ran out of the cave, towards the bushes where the clan usually relieved themselves. Krog tried to follow her, worried, but she made a brusque gesture for him to stay behind. Some things were better faced alone. What happened in the bushes that night would be etched in Zara's memory as the worst moment of her life. Her digestive system went into complete revolt. Everything she had eaten that day, along with the soda, decided it was no longer welcome. The evacuation process was so violent and uncomfortable that Zara questioned every decision that had led her to that point. She lay crouched in the bushes for hours, trembling, sweating, groaning. The night grew cold around her, but she barely noticed. She was completely focused on the war raging inside her. Each wave of cramps seemed worse than the last. She cried, not just from physical pain, but from sheer frustration and regret. Why had she drunk that strange liquid? Why hadn't she heeded Myra's warnings? Why did her curiosity have to be so strong? When she finally managed to return to the cave, crawling more than walking, the moon was already high in the sky. The clan had kept the fire burning, worried about her prolonged absence. Krog rushed to help her, supporting her weight as she staggered to her fur bed. Zara lay down, completely exhausted. Her body was empty, drained not only physically but emotionally. The heartburn still burned in her chest. Her stomach, though no longer swollen, ached with a dull, persistent pain. She could feel every muscle in her abdomen protesting, as if she had spent the entire day doing strenuous exercise. But the worst part was the thirst. The dehydration caused by all that violent evacuation had left her mouth as dry as sand. Her tongue seemed to have doubled in size. Every breath was difficult. Krog brought fresh water from the river, and Zara drank eagerly, but it seemed that no amount of water was enough to quench that deep and desperate thirst. During the following days, Zara continued to suffer the consequences of her choice. The heartburn persisted, returning in waves whenever she tried to eat anything. Her stomach, traumatized by the experience, rejected even the simplest foods. She vomited more times in the following 3 days than in her entire life up to that point. The artificial energy the soda had provided was replaced by a deep lethargy. Zara could barely get out of bed. While the rest of the clan went hunting and gathering, she stayed in the cave, wrapped in her furs, trying to regain her strength. Mira visited her regularly with her herbal infusions, shaking her head in a mixture of pity and satisfaction at being right. Krog, bless his heart, stayed by her side, bringing her the tenderest pieces of meat, the least bitter roots, the freshest water. He didn't fully understand what had happened to his companion, but he could see that she was suffering. In his simplicity, he only wanted to help. The worst part, however, wasn't physical. It was mental. Zara couldn't stop thinking about those first sips, that incredible sensation of sweetness and freshness. Part of her, a small but persistent part, wanted to experience it again. The taste lingered in her memory, a tempting recollection that wouldn't fade, no matter how hard she tried to forget it. She hated herself for it. How could she desire something that had caused her so much suffering? It was like wanting to set fire to something after being burned. But there it was, that irrational desire, that inexplicable urge to feel those bubbles dancing on her tongue once more. It was addiction. Of course, Zara didn't have the word or the concept for it. In her world, there were no addictive substances besides perhaps certain plants that some shamans used in rituals. But she was experiencing the birth of human addiction, that irrational compulsion that would cause our species to develop complicated relationships with substances for millennia to come. A week after the incident, the metal object was still in the cave, now ignored by the clan. The empty soda bottle lay beside it, a strange artifact from a time that wasn't her own. Zara would glance at it sometimes, with a mixture of fascination and revulsion. It was like looking at an enemy who had once seemed like a friend. One morning, while the rest of the clan prepared for their daily hunt, Zara finally felt strong enough to stand. Her stomach had settled, the heartburn had lessened to a mild discomfort, and her energy was beginning to return. She staggered to the cave entrance, breathing in the fresh morning air. The forest stretched before her, green and vibrant, just as it always had been. The birds sang their timeless songs. The river murmured in the distance. The sun began its journey across the sky. Everything was familiar, comforting, real. Zara thought about the bottle, that impossible liquid that seemed to have come from another world. Perhaps it had. Perhaps the spirits were trying to teach her a lesson. Or perhaps it was just the universe playing a cruel trick on a cavewoman who was too curious for her own good. She didn't know, and in truth, it didn't matter. What mattered was the lesson she had learned. Not everything that seems wonderful at first glance is truly good. Sometimes, the most tempting things are the ones that hurt us the most. And the wisdom of the elders, developed through generations of experience and error, exists for good reasons. But Zara also learned something about herself. She was brave. Curious. Willing to risk everything for the unknown. These were qualities that, although they had almost killed her this time, were also what propelled humanity forward. It was this courage to experiment, to taste the unknown, that would eventually lead her species to dominate the planet. Of course, she would pay the price. Every innovation has a cost. Every step toward progress leaves scars. Zara would carry hers, both physical and mental, for the rest of her life. Krog approached, holding his spear, ready for the hunt. He looked at Zara with concern, asking without words if she was all right. She smiled, for the first time in days, and nodded. She was all right. Hurt, but all right. Wiser, definitely. And much, much more cautious. Together, they began walking toward the forest. Zara looked back one last time, seeing the cave, the metal object, the empty bottle. Part of her story now. A story she would tell around the campfire, in the years to come, whenever some young person from the clan felt tempted to try something strange and unknown. The story would be passed down, generation after generation, transforming into legend, then myth. In a few thousand years, when humanity finally developed soft drinks, no one would remember Zara and her first disastrous encounter with the sweet, bubbly beverage. But perhaps, somewhere deep within the collective human consciousness, a faint warning would remain: be careful what you wish for, and be even more careful what you drink. Years later, Zara would become the matriarch of the clan, known for her wisdom and extraordinary stories. She would have children, who would have children, who would have more children, spreading her genes through the generations. And perhaps, just perhaps, along with those genes came a slight aversion to very sweet and bubbly drinks, a genetic echo of that terrible day in the bushes. But at that moment, as she walked through the forest beside Krog, Zara was simply grateful to be alive. Grateful for the fresh river water. Grateful for simple meat and bitter roots. Grateful for the familiar and reliable things, for the time-tested traditions, for the wisdom that came from the shared experience of her people. The modern world, with its soft drinks and complications, would have to wait. Zara had decided, quite definitively, that she preferred to stick with what she knew. Sometimes, she thought, simple is better. Sometimes, old is wiser. And sometimes, definitely, it's better not to drink strange, bubbly liquids that appear in metal objects out of nowhere. That was the last time Zara touched something she didn't fully understand. She lived a long and relatively healthy life, always telling her story to anyone who would listen. And though she would never admit it aloud, sometimes, on hot summer nights, when her thirst seemed impossible to quench with ordinary water, she would find herself thinking about that first sip. That burst of sweetness. Those magical bubbles. And then she would remember the days that followed, and the temptation would pass.